Awesome. So just to kind of get things going here, we're in a demo track setup that we have here for MRP's use. And inside of that demo, we are in an event that I have set up for tonight. So this should all be relatively familiar to most of you. But we'll start running through things kind of over the top, broad strokes. And like I said, if there's anything specific, please, raise your hand, speak out, and or throw it in the chat there, and we will be happy to make sure we get things covered for you. So the first thing you'll catch when you go into a race night in the race management section is going to be your pill draw setup. Everybody does it a little bit different. I know Callie generally suggests using I believe it is at check-in auto draw before driver selection. So basically it gives the driver an option of hitting a button when they first walk up to you, and then after they get that pill number, you can select the driver that goes to. Personally, I use the at check-in auto draw. They do essentially the same thing. Everybody's just got their little bit of different ways of doing things. So the at check-in auto draw, in my case, it's just selecting the driver prior to them selecting that pill number. Again, there's not a major difference. And let me fix a setting really quick here because my system has nightlight on. Oh, it'll look better on your guys' recording. I apologize for that. The second piece that you'll have here is going to be the transponder options. 99% of the time, I'm going to tell you to use the middle option. Use transponders, allow rentals. Even if you don't use that rental checkbox to track rental transponders because you don't have any rentals to track, or you make everybody rent or anything of that nature, it's just a checkbox that you could use in another way in order to keep track of somebody you need to track down, if you so choose. The required registration box, you're only going to see that option if you are on a partner plan. So I think a few of you might be. Those of you that are not, you won't see that option, but it is always something we can move up to with you. If you think that might be of use for you, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to work with you. I will be using it on one of the three classes that I have set up here tonight, so I can show you how a function will work. With that, in this screen, this is where you would set your pill numbers as well. So the default is set from 1 to 100. Technically, you can change that to anything you wanted if you chose to do so. So I always say that if you really wanted to screw with the drivers and give them a heart attack one night, you could change it to 200 to 300 and just see what happens. The other piece of the rebase pill there is that will allow you to do what Callie refers to as a redraw or a draw-redraw at the driver's meeting. And basically the design of that would be that if you have 1 through 100, if say you put the rebase pill as 50 out of that 100, pill number 50 becomes 1, pill 1, and pill 49 now just became pill 100. So it's a way of trying to shift some of the arguments over the digital pill draws where you will have drivers complaining about those. So it's just a tool that you can use. If you have any more questions on that, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to go over that with you a little bit deeper or one-on-one there. It isn't a function that is used terribly often yet, but I'm feeling like it's probably going to start getting used more and more often. Like I said, I know Callie uses it for the WISSOTA Challenge series every week, and that is something that they are big on. So the next part that we would go into here is going to be the entry screen. And always hit save as many times as you can possibly think of it. So the entry screen. Entries are exactly what they sound like. It's just where you're going to put in all of your drivers that are racing for that night. You have a couple of options on how to do so. The most common option being just clicking on the driver right here in that left-hand list. So you can scroll up and down. They are in alphabetical order as it sits. And just click on one of the drivers. He pulls up this information box for them, and we'll go over that in just a second. And we would add them in. With the draw option that we have selected, it's just automatically handing them a pill number. And that's just a lot easier for training purposes here. With this left-hand side here, as this list gets longer, there's more potential for getting frustrated trying to find your drivers, and that's where this filter box comes in. So with the filter box, you can start searching by a person's last name. So if you can spell, unlike me, it can work pretty quickly. First name, last name, or car number. All the above will work. So you can start to use that to simplify your list there. And as you go and you kind of learn the drivers that are most common to be around you, you're going to learn things, little tricks to that. So oftentimes typing in the numbers 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much a waste of your time because almost every number seems to have that number in it. However, if you've got a more specific last name, like in this case, we have one that the last name is Marbles, you're probably not going to have that many of them. It'll be very easy for you to narrow it down to that driver. If the driver that you have has never raced with you in that class before, and that's the important thing to keep in mind here, is that this list is based on class at your track. If they've never raced with you at your track in that class, you would use the search function right up here at the top. And in the search function, you can very easily just search for a specific driver's name. The example that I've been using a lot lately has been Bubba Pollard. That's only because for a secondary option here, I use him. So as you type in the driver, you'll see the profiles pop up that match to them, and you would just click on them to add them in. One thing to keep note of, if you're working on a laptop, you do have to actually physically click in this screen or this little search area. You cannot do a tap to click. Tap to click will just clear it out. I'm not exactly positive why. So in the case of Bubba here, if I was using him and I, for whatever unknown reason, did not see his profile there, I could go to click and create new. In most of your cases, you are not going to really need to create new drivers. So please, please, please search for drivers in multiple ways before you create new ones. Meaning that if your driver comes up and says his name is John, also search for Jonathan and Johnny, or different spellings of John, because there's a good chance he's already in the system. And that's just going to help you and I and Callie, especially when she's working on points and she ends up finding duplicate drivers at the very frustrating time for her. So do your best to not create duplicates if possible. Our system does have some checks and balances in place to try to prevent some of those duplicates from happening. So as my example there of using Bubba Pollard, if I went in here and I was going to add him again, but in this case, I'm going to select the next town over, not Sonoy, Georgia, but Noonan, Georgia. And I go to create this, it's not going to let me. It pops up and says, hey, this guy already exists in this other town. Is that the one you wanted? So pay attention to these. There are some screens like this that are trying to help you to make less of a mess for yourself. So now going a little bit further into those entries, if I click on any of the drivers there, the number one thing that I have is their car number. Remember that their car number is linked to your track profile, not to their driver profile. So if a driver walks up and says that their number is incorrect in the points list, they would like to get it updated, you need to update it there at the track. The way that that number is populated in your point standings is by using the default number. So if Billy Bedrock here comes up to me and says, hey, I'm only the 85 from now on, not the 885. So I change the number, I need to set that default. That default is where the number in your point standings is coming from. The next thing down there would be owners. Owners are important if you are doing an owners championship or if you are printing checks through MRP. If you're printing checks through us, you need to make sure that this owner states a correct owner name that the check needs to be made out to. Meaning in this case, this one here I have entered as Bernie Stubigan. That's how the check would get made out. It would not be made out to Indy Race Parts, even though he owns Indy Race Parts. It would be made out to Bernie Stubigan. So again, pay attention to make sure that what you're putting in there is correct for what you need for the night. And you can set your defaults here again, as well as marking that that payout goes to the owner. If you put the correct owner in, but you don't mark that the payout goes to the owner, the check would still get printed to the incorrect name. Yes, Jeanette. So if they change car numbers mid-season, it has no other bearing than just populating that list on that car number. So it's important to remember that the results are tied to the driver, but the car number is tied to that driver in your track, if that makes sense. So yes, it would total both of theirs. The next piece down there is your transponder number. Again, transponder numbers, just type it. That's where you're going to put in your transponder. If it's a rental, you can mark it as a rental. That's all that box is. And you can mark your defaults to make your life a little bit easier. Please don't assume that when a driver walks up and says, yeah, I don't know my transponder number, that the last one in the list here is correct. 9 times out of 10, it probably isn't. You good? Excuse me. There is a very, very good chance that driver either had a rental or a track typed it in incorrectly. That doesn't mean that this list is useless. What I'm saying by that is the way I handle it is I walk up to or as the driver walks up, I go, hey, is it the same transponder you used at X? And I will just state, X being, hey, last Saturday at your favorite track, is that the transponder you used? Keeping that line of communication is what will help you to prevent from making those mistakes. If they're not sure and you're not sure, you don't have to put a number in here right this minute. You can do it afterwards. And it's a good way for you to make sure that you don't miss any, because you'll see an empty box and that's obvious. So lineup override, exactly what it sounds like, gives you options for forcing that driver to the back of the heats or all races. And then the last batch of information here, you guys are really not going to see. So I'm going to skip past them for now. If there's anything in the, that goes back to that partner plan level stuff. So if there's anything that comes up for you guys that you're a little unsure of, or you're seeing more things in the screen that don't make a lot of sense, please reach back out or use the MRP help link, and we will be happy to take a look at what you've got there. So I'm going to get 10 drivers entered here and then make sure I've got 10 transponder numbers in here correctly. When you are entering transponder numbers or car numbers, it will not allow you to put in a duplicate. So if I try to say Gary Gruss is also going to drive a number 01 here, like Burt Beetle that I've already entered, it's going to say, hey, that number's already taken. Don't get upset or frustrated with it. It's just trying to let you know that number's already there and try and help you keep the line moving. So you'll need to either add a letter to it or use a different car number. Every track has a little different system to how they would handle that. Personally, I just have them add a letter and I don't care about them adding anything to the car. Other tracks, it's a little different. So we'll get in here. Go ahead, Bruce or Brittany.
That was me, actually, Dakota. While you're doing that, not that it's not entertaining for us to watch you repetitively put drivers in there, but I just want to mention a few things that are specific to WISSOTA here in the entry list. So he mentioned searching for drivers. A lot of your drivers are going to have the MRP barcode, so there will be a little scan barcode deal up top there that you'll be able to scan them in. That's going to be obviously the most efficient and least error-prone method, is to use that barcode scanning option. We do have a few tutorials on that as well if you want more details on that. But I also want to mention too, when you do check them in, this particular 410 Sprint Wing class is not WISSOTA sanctioned. For your classes that are WISSOTA sanctioned, when you have that screen pop up that you're putting the driver into the entry list, it's going to tell you if they have a WISSOTA license or not. So just keep an eye on that. There you go. So this is a screen there. You can see the message up at the top that this entrant does not have a confirmed membership. So at this point, you'd have a decision to make, whether they purchase a temp license or if you're going to bypass them for this event and follow up later. So just wanted to point out a couple things there real quick, since a lot of you are, or the majority of are WISSOTA tracks, just to keep an eye on those things. And again, we do have other tutorials that kind of dive deeper into that, but did I miss anything there? I think that was just kind of the two things I saw that maybe are things to keep an eye out for.
No, I think you grabbed a couple items that I was missing there, Ross, and thank you for that.
Yep.
I do apologize. Ross nor I are exactly the best public speakers.
Yeah,
so it's often for us to forget things. Yes, so if a driver claims their profile, they automatically will have the digital MRP card. So it'll be right inside the app for them as long as they log in with the same email address that they claim their driver profile with. And then you can do a scan barcode option there. Just like I was talking to Kelly about a little bit earlier this week, pretty much any USB or Bluetooth scanner that you find is going to work. So if you do some quick searching online, you'll find a boatload of different options. Pick what you think would work well for you. So that kind of covers the entry list for the most part. There's not a whole lot going on here, but it is what I would tell you is the absolute most critical part of your night. Get your entries right. Don't rush it. Spend a moment to verify with your drivers that the transponders are correct, that you've got the correct driver profile, correct owners, all of that good stuff. If you can manage to get this correct and the next screen that we'll go to correct, which will be the races, your life will be pretty easy moving forward throughout the rest of the night. If you rush this, that's where mistakes start to happen and things get a little bit frustrating. So one other thing I wanted to go over here in the entry list really quickly is in this report section is that transponder list. So anybody that you marked as a rental, you can have this list right here where they are checked. And it is a little bit of a light coloring. But what I personally do is I double click on rented so it moves all my rentals to the top. And then I know who I need to chase down. And yeah, exactly as Cameron just said there, the more time that you can spend there being a little bit annoying and verifying the correct paperwork and information at the beginning, generally as much as they might be frustrated for a minute, they will be much happier at the end of the night when everything goes smooth and easy. So Kelly, the marking all paperwork is done through registration. So if you as a track do a secondary registration that's not the same as the WISSOTA registration, it's a track yearly registration, you can mark so that when you're in the entry screen here putting a driver in, that they have all of their forms, and that would be right here. So if you have any further questions on that, go ahead and shoot an email. I can get you the links directly to the help center, or if you want to just go to mrphelp.com, you will be able to just do a search for registration, and it goes through that a little bit deeper. But yes, that can be used as another tool there as well to help you guys out. So from the entry screen, we are going to bounce over here to races. Races will be relatively straightforward. You have a couple of options, and you kind of have to learn what makes the most sense for yourself and your track. You can copy a previous race setup. So that's what these are right here. This is any previous race that we've done throughout this season. You can copy any one of these, and it shows you right here underneath it. So it's the date of what that event was, how many entries there were, and what the setup was, or what the other races were. However, I've never personally used that function. It all depends on your area. If you have a very, very consistent race or a driver count or car count, you could easily use that. Typically, I'm traveling a lot more, and so I don't have it very consistent. So I always use the add new races and do it from scratch. Nothing is wrong with doing it either way. Don't take it as one way is better than the other. It's just options of what works best for your location. So for this setup, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of heat races and a feature. So I can kind of go over a few things here with you guys and show you a couple options, and specifically show you a couple of options that Callie would like me to show you. So I'm going to add 2 heat races at 5 laps. And for an A feature, I'm just going to put in 10 laps as the demo example. The heat races themselves, or actually, sorry. In qualifying, if you have qualifying, I know most of you are going to be Orbits people, and you probably have better information on it than I do. But if you do a qualifying session and you are on Westhold, please keep in mind that you're best off to leave the lap count out because it will try to finish the file before you're actually finished with your qualifying session. Orbits has some other settings. I know you guys know it better than I do, so you should be okay there. But this is all it is for adding races in. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that with the feature events, you do have to put a letter with it. That's part of how the coding works in order to make sure that we can get you the lineups generated correctly for your features is based off of these letters. So you do have to have a letter anytime you have a feature event. Just keep that in mind. And we'll click add. This right here is the item that gets missed probably the second most. So probably the most errors happen in the entry list. The second most errors happen right here in this race configuration spot. So after you've set your races, this is where you're going to place your transfers. So in this case, we're just going to go per race, top all to the A feature. Or if we're doing passing points, we would shift over here to from group. Top all to the A feature. I'm doing all now because I only have 10 cars. If you needed to run a B feature, you would not put all. You would put your top 16, your top 18, or whatever that number is for you guys. And then I suggest doing the quick math and putting the number, the remaining number in the B feature location. meaning that if I had 30 cars and I was taking the top 18 to the A, I would put top 18 to the A feature, next 12 to the B feature. Periodically, I've noticed where something goes a little haywire if you try and use the all function in the B and it doesn't quite calculate the lineup correctly. It's not something that happens often. It's just one of those items that I really suggest doing the quick math. It's generally not too terribly difficult. In here, you can rename your races if you have specific race sponsors or anything like that you wanted to. And the same thing with the A feature there. And then you would click save. Really quick on that renaming of things. I know Callie harped on it last night. We talked about it really quickly this morning. If you are renaming your classes, do not take WISSOTA out of the name of those classes if they are a WISSOTA sanctioned class. That's part of your deal with WISSOTA. So if you have WISSOTA late models on your schedule or on your setup and you've got a sponsor for them, that's not a problem. It needs to be such and such towing WISSOTA late models. You have to keep WISSOTA in the names there. So now that we have our races set up, this is when we would jump over to the first set of lineups. Personally, the way that I typically handle things, because I'm doing draw and setting the lineups and running to a tower, is that I would do my draw. I have a cutoff time. I set my first set of lineups while I'm still in the pit area there, and then I go to the tower after I've set that first set. Totally up to you guys. If you have more staff than what I'm typically working with, hopefully you don't have to do as much running around like a chicken with your head cut off that I do. But just keep in mind, find the pattern that works best for you guys. So I'm going to set my heat race lineup here. So I'll just go to calculate. And with WISSOTA, it's really, really easy. You'll just go to WISSOTA heats. Callie, correct me if I'm wrong. Is there an opening night heat race that's different than the others? Or is it just the WISSOTA heat race all the time? Or not. So we're just going to go to WISSOTA heats. There is a little... Sorry. Cameron, do you happen to know if there's a secondary lineup or is it always just that same one?
I believe there is a secondary opening night. Let me just double check that. I think I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it in your list there, but give me just one second to make sure.
Yeah, that works. We just want to make sure we're getting you guys the right information there. So Ross is going to double check that really quick. While we're in this screen, while they're double checking that, my lineups is specifically lineups that we've checked or you have checked that are to your track. And the idea there is to help clean things up so you're not searching through as many different options as are technically available. If you're ever looking for an option that you're not seeing under my lineups, you can go to all lineups and get those different options, as well as right here is this little gear that you can click on in order to bounce you into the lineup, overall lineup settings. Anything that you check mark here is what gets put into the My Lineups section. Everybody thinks it's WISSOTA opening night.
For the feature, actually. So the heats, I believe, is just the same.
Heats are always the same, but the A's got a different lineup. Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of what I thought. So we'll just go to WISSOTA heats and click calculate. That's all it is. If you're on a class that's not WISSOTA and you're just doing passing points for the night, you would typically just line up from heat from pill draw. Same basic concept. Anytime you see a little question mark next to a heat or a lineup scheme, if you click on that little question mark, it's going to open up a help desk article from us where you can get a little more information about that lineup. In the case of the WISSOTA ones, it actually will direct us over to the WISSOTA website with their specific lineups. So if you have any questions on that, that is the best way to go about finding those. So again, we've got our WISSOTA heats. We've calculated it. We're going to save those. So once I have my first batch of lineups all set and I'm ready to roll for the night, I head up to the tower and then I'm going to fire up Orbits and MRP Live. MRP Live, you have a couple of options on how to handle it. Totally up to you guys and what makes the most sense for you. I am a copy and paste person, so I tend to open up MRP Live, copy and paste the code in. If you are not a copy and paste person, or you simply just tend to forget little items, which is not a bad thing, If you come here to the MRP Live tab in Race Management, right here, there's a button that says Launch from Web. It will grab that code for you and launch everything and get you connected. So nothing wrong with doing it either way. Just my habit tends to be a copy and paste. That's partially from traveling more. So once I have this connected, and it will show you here that it is connected and what IP you're connected on, you would hit Get Lineups. 9 times out of 10, when people give us a phone call or an email saying that they've had an issue with MRP Live and it wasn't working, 9 times out of 10, the problem is this box right here. This box is going to be 50,000. If for some unknown reason that you think it should be something other than 50,000, I would rather you email us and verify what you're looking at, because 9 times out of 10, it is 50,000. So just keep that number in the back of your head, 50,000. So once you're connected, you hit that Get Lineups, and then we're going to use Orbits here to start with, since I know most of you are going to be on Orbits. I'm going to go to this registration screen right here. I'm going to go to Import Groups and Runs. I'm going to browse for wherever I saved that file to. So there's my groups, open, next, and finish. So now my groups exist and we're ready to go here with the 410 Sprint class. And then I'm going to import runs as well. And that's what's going to bring in the actual race lineups for me. So groups being the overall group of those drivers, and then runs being the actual runs of those races for the night. So with that, I'm going to bounce over to timing. I'm going to let one of these run. Actually, no, I'm not, because these are small and they will not work correctly. The transponder systems want 10 cars in the demos, and I only have 5 in each of these. So I'm going to go back here to my lineups really quick. So one thing that we had talked about in the earlier training today that Kelly would like to go over for a minute is that if you are doing a double heat race lineup, where you're doing passing points from both heat races as your A feature lineup, what you would do is calculate, and you're looking for karting 468. So the first heat race is your pill draw lineup as is. The second one is an exact duplicate inverted. All they're going to be. So that puts 10 cars in each one here. That's most common what you're going to be looking for a duplicate heat format or a double heat format. If there's something a little bit different, again, reach out to one of us, Callie, ourselves here, MRP. We'll be more than happy to go over what you're thinking. But 9 times out of 10, that's what you're looking for, is karting 468. And that'll put everybody in both sets of heats. So I'm going to re-import that information because now I have better information to work with. So I'm going to delete these 2 since I made that mistake. So don't be me. We're going to import again here with the corrected runs. And so now I have both of them with 10 cars. So now we will set a demo real quick here so I can show you the import function. That's the demo track that Orbits provides. So while these are running for a couple of laps here, we'll bounce back over to the MRP section. In the MRP Live screen, when a race is running, you'll be able to see it from right inside that MRP Live screen. It's a good place for you to be able to keep track of where things are at. And we have a tool we're trying to work on a little bit here to make these webinars a little bit easier with an opaquing function. So that's what was blurring out those times there. So you can see all these guys are running. In this same screen, you can pull up, so MRP Live right here at the top, lap viewer. This is something that you could put up near your concession stand or in front of your announcers or things of that nature in order to keep fans there at your track engaged with what's happening on that track while you're going at it. And before I miss this any further, Cameron has the question ready for me. So if you know the answer, wait until the answer is put into the chat by by Cameron before you answer. So do not put the answer in the chat if you know the answer. The question you're looking for is, what year did WISSOTA start using My Race Pass? So when this training is done tonight, you're to email Callie with your name, full name, please, and what track you are with, and the answer to that question so that she can keep track of who was actually here. So that's the lap viewer. At the same time as that lap viewer, under tools here, there's an option for lineup monitor, and this is something you could place somewhere down near your where your whiteboard traditionally was, or near your pit shack, something of that nature, as a place for drivers to be able to go see what the lineups are without you having to write everything down. It is absolutely not a requirement for you to use, but it is something that you could use. And in a lot of cases, is a good option, because then if there is a mistake, you can correct it from the tower without having to chase somebody down with a dry erase marker that inevitably walked away with it. So we're going to bounce over to the results now for that race that I had just had running. And we're going to go back to orbits for a minute and stop that run. You would save it if you were normally saving these. I'm not saving these demos. And all you would do to import that data back into MRP here is just grab this MRP Live button. There's the race that we just ran. I click import. Big thing to keep note of here from orbits versus MRP is that if you mark a DNS or a DNF or anything of that nature in orbits, you will not get that to transfer over from orbits to us. Basically, that is not a part of the raw data that we're reading from orbits. So you do have to mark it in here manually. You're not going to be able to pull that over. And that seems to be a question that comes up relatively often. So if you're going to mark any DNFs, DNSs, black flags, no passing points, all of that right here. Again, and we'll save that. We're going to do the same for number 2 here. However, I'm not going to run it on the demo just because it would be quicker for me to enter these. So we can move on to an A lineup. And then I will show the orbits, or the Westhold connection for the A feature. So I now have a result in for both heat races. If something ever happens and you need to handle something, enter your lineup or your result by hand, you can do so. We don't stop you from being able to do so. And you can either just click on them like you saw me doing, or right in this little box here, you can start typing in those car numbers. It grays a driver out as you've used them. The idea being so that you can't mistakenly enter the same driver more than once. So just keep that in mind. Also, in the case of a result, it will only give you the option to put drivers into a result that are in the lineup for that race. So I can't accidentally put a driver that's in the lineup for Heat 1 into the result for Heat 2 without making a change to the lineups. That's done on purpose. It's supposed to be there to help you guys. If you find that that's being a nuisance for you for some reason, please get with me or with Callie so we can try and figure out why that's causing you a problem. There's probably something else going on. So for the lineups, we'll bounce over here to the A feature. Again, we're just going to calculate. In the case of WISSOTA, your opening nights are right here. So WISSOTA opening night A feature. Callie/Cameron, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but anytime you have a WISSOTA special, an event that is considered a special by WISSOTA, you have to use that opening night one as well, correct?
You can, otherwise you're doing passing points or something.
Otherwise passing points, okay. So that's the normal there would be that, the opening night or the passing point styles. So if you
on a regular night for WISSOTA, a regular night for WISSOTA is the point average. A special, you can use the opening night because it is draw redraw.
Yep, that's what I meant. I apologize for making that slightly confusing. So opening night will be a draw redraw format. Your standard regular nights from that point forward is going to be the point average. So I'm going to show you a demo with the point average here really quick, and then we'll bounce back to that draw redraw format. So if I click on the point average and calculate it, all of my guys had a point average. So there is my lineup. That's all you're going to be doing on your standard nights. Very quick, very easy. If there's any questions on how this lineup was created, there's this how was this calculated button right here. Go ahead and click on that. What it's going to do is open up and show you those averages. You're still going to get a few drivers that argue with you one way or another, but 9 times out of 10, this is going to answer most of their questions. So, guy on the pole has got the lowest average. Working your way down, and I have 2 guys that did not have an average, so they're at the back. It's all that you're going to need to do. Everything is handled for you. You should be ready to roll.
If they are arguing with you, you can also pull the point average report.
Yes. So right here in reports, there is an option specifically called WISSOTA point average. And that breaks it down a little bit further than what that very generic quick report did there, showing you what nights are counted towards their average and what they had on those nights. So that should mitigate most of your arguments or frustrations. Excuse me. So really quickly here, I'm going to shut down my orbits information, and I'm going to show you to connect to to Westhold, so that we can make sure that everybody is covered tonight. I hit a button too fast. It's trying to reconnect again. So don't be me. Don't overclick too quickly. All right, so I'm moving over to Race Manager for MRP Live. I'm going to close that for a minute, and I will show you the opening again. I'm going to go into Westhold here. And I thought that I'm going to clean out a couple of races really quickly, so I apologize. There we go. All right, so all we're going to need to do here, open up MRP Live again. That same information was just in there, so we're all good to go. We can just click Connect. Click on Get Lineups, and now if I go to my assignment screen here in Westhold, there is that lineup that I just created, and we could go ahead and run that. The process for connecting and running, it's pretty straightforward. Once you get it the first couple of times, you'll be able to bounce back and forth pretty quickly, and that's 90% of what you're doing throughout the night. So that's why I say it is critical. Get the entries correct, get the races correct. Once you do that, then all you're doing is setting a lineup, pushing it to your transponder system, running a race, pushing it back to MRP. That's all you're really doing throughout the entire night. All right. So the other format there that we were just talking about on your specials, or that draw-redraw situation there, is if we calculate either the WISSOTA, it'd be the WISSOTA opening night, calculate, it pulls up this box for you. With this box, you have 3 different options on how to do your redraws. So if you were doing something really special where you wanted to have them doing draws on the front stretch, numbers under a cap or in a pizza box or anything like that, you can type in those numbers manually here. If you wanted to do something kind of out of the ordinary but somewhat special, you could have it set up where maybe you have somebody logged in a near your pit shack or something, and have them bring their kids over to hit a button for them and do an auto redraw per driver. Or maybe even done on the front stretch, something of that nature. Or if you're running really far behind and you're inevitably going to hear about it from the drivers, you can hit this auto redraw all option, and it will redraw everybody all at once for you, and click save. Anybody that's a part of a redraw, it also puts this little blue dot next to them, just so that you know that those were part of the redraw. So that is all you're going to really do for setting your lineups. And Kelly or Cameron, if you guys want to just let me know if there's anything I missed on the overall lineup or getting your races set, please let me know. But I think I hit most of it.
I think you're killing it.
Okay. All right. So we'll jump over to the results. I'm going to just manually enter these here, but I'll show you with a type-in option this way. Again, it's very quick to do the imports, from MRP here. And you can run one real quick here. It's not a difficult thing, really. It just needs to get one lap in. So what I found is Westhold runs fairly quickly here. We can just get one lap and do an import just to show you again. So we've got one lap. We'll go ahead and finish it. We have found that it happens once in a great while. It's not an all-the-time item, but please try to make sure that you always hit a checkered flag. Our system / the transponder systems are looking for those checkered flag triggers. So periodically you can see some weird data come through on MRP Live if you don't use the checkered flag correctly. So please try to use the checkered flag as often as possible, and we'll just import that run. So there's all 10 of our drivers. We're going to finish that. I am not going to DQ or DNF anybody in this case, but from this point forward, we're just going to bounce over to the points and pay. So the points and pay screen is pretty straightforward. Most of you guys are going to be pretty familiar with it, but again, if you're not, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to help you out and or get you those MRP help links to keep working on things. You can copy your point groups from week to week. Again, it's a function that I have personally never used very often, but if you have a very consistent track, which a lot of you do, you can just copy from a previous race, and that'll help you with cleaning up what you're doing. If you're doing it from scratch, you'll hit this green Add Points and Pay Group button. For your WISSOTA classes, you are going to want to use a point group name. Honestly, the typical way that I do it is just weekly and WISSOTA. So in this case, I'll put in weekly, just as the example to show here for a minute. You're going to choose the correct scheme. Again, we make this really easy in that all you're going to do for your WISSOTA ones is click WISSOTA National Scheme. If your track points are the same as the WISSOTA points, you only need to do this once. If your track points are different than the WISSOTA points, you will have to put in 2 point groups. It only takes a minute to do that. Not a big deal one way or the other, but just keep that in mind. So there's my WISSOTA points. Pay schemes are created by you. If you have any questions on how to do those, again, reach out, or we can get you the links to the MRP help section on how to enter the payout schemes. They're very quick and easy to enter, and I will touch on those real quick here in just a minute. But there is a pay scheme. You're going to choose what schedules they go to. As Callie sanctions races, which she's hoping to start doing, I believe she said next week. So make sure your schedules are in and you have the correct classes and you're set up correctly, and no WISSOTA classes on your test and tunes. Please don't make Callie angry to start the season. You will start to see that all of your events have multiple schedules. One will be your racetrack schedule, and one will be WISSOTA National schedule. WISSOTA National or National Points. I don't remember how it's titled. If your track points are the same as the WISSOTA points, you can check both of them at the same time. If they're different, this is where you would start by checking only one or the other. So whichever one you're going to start with, whether you start with WISSOTA or with track points, it doesn't truly matter as long as you make sure that you take care of both. So we'll select the schedule that's going on. The next part of this screen right here is your points and pay eligibility. If for some reason you're taking away points or pay from any one of the drivers for whatever set of reasons, you can do that right here. And all you're going to do is click check boxes. I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe if I remember everything Kelly's ever said to me correctly, in the WISSOTA world, you're pretty much only going to have to do the points section. You're not typically going to be taking away pay.
And most of the time when you use this, it is for a conduct violation for the evening. And you will, by unchecking that, the driver will receive no points for the event, no show points or no feature points. That's how you'll use that. If your track is no points, no pay for that, then uncheck the pay.
Kelly, does WISSOTA do the move up function as well? So if it was third place, then fourth place would take their points, or no?
You will go back to results. That driver that got the conduct violation, move him to the back with a DQ.
Okay.
And then you'll move everybody up. You do it that way, not here.
Okay. Okay. So what Callie was referring to there then is that in the results, if you're taking away somebody's points and pay in order to move them up, basically they become a full-on DQ. So you would mark them as a DQ, and that will drop them to the rear and update the points going forward. In other situations, you can use these two buttons down here at the bottom. So not on your WISSOTA classes, but in other situations or the pay situation, basically what this would create would be that if third place was DQ'd and lost their points in pay, fourth place would now become third place. So that can be different depending on the track. Again, any questions on that kind of thing, please reach out. Please use the MRP help sections. We'll make sure to get you down the right path. Once I have the correct points group names, the actual correct point scheme, and the correct pay scheme, I click add. You're done at this point for the most part. Take a minute, read through it, just verify that this makes sense. So this first box is your totals. So that's your total pay per driver and your total point per driver. If something looks off here, then you can start looking down a little bit further and see where it went off. And that's where so every one of these is broken down by race. Cali does not like adjustments. If you need to make an adjustment, there's something else wrong. Take a look at it. If you have a question on that, please reach out to the other tracks that are in your area that might have had a similar situation. To Cali, to Cameron, potentially us. We don't necessarily directly get involved in your results specifically, but if you're running into an issue with a setting causing you a problem or something of that nature, that's not a problem. We can help get you down the right path. But Cali hates adjustments. Try to avoid making adjustments if possible.
Thank you.
Pay adjustments, she's probably not going to notice too much, but if you did have somebody walk up to you in the middle of your A feature and throw another $100 on the table and ask you to add that to the winner or something like that, that's where I would use this. Generally speaking, if I have any inclination that there is increased money prior to the event, I'm not going to do an adjustment. I'm going to create a new scheme. It just creates less mistakes. If you need to create new schemes, you'd come up here to settings and you'll go to points and pay schemes. Ours is obviously a bit of a mess on this demo profile, but all you would need to do is click add scheme. You're looking for a payout scheme, name it, click add, and then you're adding breakdowns from there. Breakdowns are very, very straightforward. So there's an A feature. You're going to put in however many to add.
Always put in more cars. Sorry, always put in more cars than you think you'll ever have, because if you don't, then you're not going to get the proper points.
Yes. Yep. So pay schemes and point schemes are entered nearly the exact same. But what it basically will boil down to is that you'll put in a number to add, what you want to start at, and what you want to decrease by. This function right here works great for point schemes. Point schemes are usually pretty even. We're starting at one number, we're dropping by a certain number all the way down, no big deal. Pay schemes are almost never even. It's just not how promoters work. So what we will typically, or what I will typically do here, is I'm going to hit this green plus button until I get as many lines as I need till I get to the point where my payout is going to be the same from that point on back. That's typically going to happen somewhere between 8 and 12 on most schemes. So in this case, like if I got to 10th place and I was $50 on back, that's where I would put in the $50. Otherwise, I would just start right here at the top, type in my number, press tab twice, and I come to the next box. Type in my number, press tab twice. It will go very quickly. So again, I would suggest adding as many schemes as you need. And if you have an increased special pay or something of that nature, create a new scheme. Don't make the adjustments. There's less chance of error. Really, that is everything we were set to go over tonight. If anybody has any specific questions, please let me know right away. So Cameron just went ahead and threw in the response here for the question. So remember, the question was, in what year did WISSOTA start using my race pass? The answer is 2017. So again, when we get done with this tonight, please go ahead and be proactive with it. Send Callie an email just with your full name, your track name, and the answer to that question. Remember, that answer is 2017. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to kind of go over some stuff right now. The biggest thing that I did not touch on completely here that I would suggest everybody takes a couple of minutes and goes and looks through it is the reports section. There is a lot of reports available to you guys. It's almost impossible for us to hit everything that might come into play for you. So please take a few minutes to go look at that when you get a chance. There's a couple reports that we're working on right now, including one that will allow the tracks to see any and all of the bypassed licenses that they've done for WISSOTA. So if you're trying to keep track of who all you or what all you owe WISSOTA for bypassed licenses or temporarily purchased licenses there at the track, there will be a report for that momentarily. And as Cameron mentions here, even if you are watching the recording of this, which will be posted hopefully tomorrow, you will need to send her or Callie the question and answer from last night's webinar session. Lori, I'm not positive if last night's is up just yet. If it's not up yet, it should be tomorrow or worst case into Friday. I'm not sure how far behind we are on that. So I am going to stop this recording here in just a second.